Our educational topic tonight will be presented by our very own Erin. Large-scale planting and restoration, the Fox Shank Living Laboratory. We'll go over some chapter updates and then we'll go over upcoming and past events. So we'll turn it over to Erin now to do, the next slide gives us a little bio on Erin.
Oh.
There we go. So Erin is a water resources engineer by day and a botanist at heart. A degree in environmental engineering and biology from Ohio State. Grew up doing the fall hiking spree through Summit Metro Parks, and has always wanted to be in the woods ever since. She focuses on restoring native communities, stream and wetland restoration, and environmental education. Thank you, Erin, very much for taking the time to do our presentation for us today.
No problem. Thank you. I'm gonna switch PowerPoints here real quick. Okay. View. Present. Okay. Can you guys see this screen? Oh, how do I get it out of presenter view? Maybe if I do it this way.
One of those should be it.
That's what I thought. I feel like it always changes, right? When I'm about to.
Oh, up at the top, display settings next to actions.
Thank you.
Is that where we're going need to go? There you go.
Is that better? Okay. Now you guys can see full screen. So I'm excited to talk to you all today about some of my professional work at a company called Biohabitats. So Biohabitats is a small to mid-range engineering firm. We have about 10 offices throughout the country, and we say that they're located in bioregions, which are based around different watersheds in the US and Canada. So I get to work in the Great Lakes bioregion. And our office focuses exclusively on environmental issues, which include conservation planning, ecological restoration, and regenerative design. Some other careers at my company, and I always like to talk about this to give especially students different ideas of different career options to think of. So other types of jobs at my company include ecological science positions such as restoration ecologists, soil scientists, foresters, arborists, engineers like myself, landscape architects, GIS professionals, as well as on-the-ground implementation supervisors and equipment operators. And our mission is to restore the earth and inspire ecological stewardship. So I feel really lucky that I get to work at a place that has values that align with mine. As Kim mentioned, I am a water resources engineer. So most of my days are spent doing site assessments and then design work, modeling, but I get to have my hands in planting plans to a degree as well. So yeah, get to blend best of both worlds between engineering and botany. And this is a picture of me being excited at seeing my first pink lady slipper orchid. And at Wild Ones, if you didn't know, I am the Northeast Ohio Habitat Corridor Chair. So I really, really enjoy working on Wild Ones and getting to see everyone's gardens. And if there's any questions, feel free to shout out as I'm on a slide or pop it in the chat if others could help monitor the chat in case I miss it.
I'm on it.
Thank you, thank you. So I know we're all native plant enthusiasts, but I am going to do just a tiny bit of background terminology in case there's any newcomers. And I will say that I do find maybe others on the native habitat corridor team notice this as well. There is still invasive species coming in gardens here and there. So I find it worthwhile to do a tiny bit of education about native plant terminology. So after that, I'll get get into our project example today that we're talking about. So according to the Nature Conservancy, there are about 3,000 native plant species in the wild in Ohio. 75% are native, 25% are non-native, and 100 of those are invasive. So varying level of issues we'll get into further. These are some photos from some of our projects here at Biohabitats. Um, a native species refers to a species within its natural range of habitat, and so it's adapted to that particular environment with its climate, soils, moisture levels, etc., so that they should require less maintenance, and ideally no watering, but we were just kind of talking here now about how we've even had to water some native plants this summer because of the drought. Um, Non-native species are species found outside of their ranges, which is unfortunately most of the plants found at traditional garden stores. For instance, daylilies are native to Asia, as well as hostas are native to Asia. Cultivars are what you usually find. Oops, too far. Cultivars are what you usually find at big box stores when they do have, quote, native species, such as the purple coneflower is one that's often sold. A cultivar has just been what it sounds like cultivated by humans to be bred to have certain traits. For instance, this cultivar right here being bred to be white petaled instead of purple, have bigger blooms, etc. So one tell to be able to tell if something's the native, actual native species, straight species, or a cultivar is if it has these little apostrophes and another word after the species name here. So that's how we can tell this is a cultivar and not the straight species.
Erin?
Also, oh, I'm sorry. I was going to
Go
piggyback.
ahead. Yeah. Feel free to
Uh,
add. Yeah.
I was going to piggyback and say a good telltale sign of a cultivar is if it has like what I call like a branded sounding name. Like instead of like Black Eyed Susans, they call them like Summer Sunbursts or um, like uh, something like Fields of Purple Dreams for like asters. So if you hear any of like those branded like names, it's probably a cultivar. And like Bluestone perennials, like they'll send me emails. I keep marking them as spam. They send catalogs. It's like nothing but cultivars in there. But yeah, that's a good telltale sign too.
Great point, Diab. Thank you. Yes.
Hmm.
Everlasting blooms is not normally a scientific name to be found.
Do you know, Erin, what the impact is of so I know with the cultivars, the challenge with the cultivars is that they lack genetic diversity because they're all clones. So do you know, is there an issue when those cultivars get folded into the genetics of the straight species plants? Do you have any idea if that's an issue?
It is an issue. I am going to get onto it in a
Oh,
slide
sorry, I
here
apologize.
shortly. No worries. Yeah. Same line of thinking. So what is the issue? Firstly, invasives are an issue, as many of us know. There's invasive plants as well as invasive animals, insects. We were just talking about spotted lanternflies, and that's an issue because they lack natural competition, being from a different part of the world, and so they are able to take over more easily and take up that space that native species would otherwise inhabit, which has a cascading effect on all the insects that depend on those plants, and then the animals that depend on those insects, and so on. Some common invasive plants in Ohio are here: honeysuckle, reed canary grass, phragmites, buckthorn, purple loosestrife, multiflora rose, and I know a lot of us work hard at removing those, and we have had some great workshops on learning how to remove those within wild ones. The Ohio Invasive Plants Council keeps up to date on species that are determined to be invasive within the state of Ohio, so they keep adding more and more and working to phase those out of sale from our box garden stores. So this gets into Kim's question she brought about: what's the issues with cultivars? If they're just cultivated versions of native straight species. The main issue with cultivars is when you force a plant to put more energy into beautiful blooms or another feature that they're trying to get out of the plant, it causes there to be less energy for nectar. And so there's been different research done on this issue and showing that there's some nectar, so I guess they're better than, you know, a non-native species, for instance, but they aren't providing as much nectar as they should be as the straight species for those animals and plants that are expecting them, which can cause issues with migrations. They've traced that as well. So I'm not sure if that answers your question at all, Kim, if you want to add anything else.
Well, that does. I'm just curious, like, so if we have, some of those, especially those double bloom flowers, some of those the red leaved species that we've created, like, whether or not those genetics are gonna cause issues within the native straight species populations. Like, what if our straight species start showing up with more and more red leaves? You know what I mean? Like, what?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think somebody should research that.
I know, with all of the funding that is available, right?
So in general, I'd say when you're able to buy the straight species, that's the better route to go from one of our wonderful native nurseries that we have a list of on our website are great sources for those.
I have a question. If you
Yeah.
get one of those fancy cultivars and it does go to seed, do the seeds revert back to the original plant or is it still going to be modified?
That's a great question. I feel like I'm picturing a Punnett square now. I'm not entirely sure. I would think it's probably most likely to be similar to what you have. A lot of genetically modified plants have non-viable seeds as well. So if it does reproduce, that would be interesting. Yeah, keep us updated on that if you do that science experiment. So I don't need to spend too much time with this group. We are well aware of the benefits of native species. They're lower maintenance, they help the climate, they help conserve water and support biodiversity. And I've always loved these images showing the root systems of native plants compared to lawn or agriculture. There's just so much more depth to both trees, but also grass species as well. And this quote has always stayed with me from Doug Townley's Nature's Best Hope. 90% of the insects that eat plants can develop and reproduce only on the plants with which they share an evolutionary history. So the monarch is a very famous example about how it only can use milkweed species as its host plant. And similarly, the Carner blue butterfly, its host plant is the lupine, but those are just the tip of the iceberg. It's 90% of plant-eating insects need all of those native species. So just to paint a picture, the picture on the left does have some invasive species in it, actually. Tiger lilies are invasive, but hostas are not. But these kinds of landscapes aren't really providing very much benefit to pollinators and native wildlife compared to the picture on the right with lots of different native species. All right, and with that, I'm going to get into our project example now. So this is the Fox Shank Living Laboratory. It is a project that was constructed in 2022 in Tontogany, Ohio. Has anyone ever heard of Tontogany, Ohio? Jessica hearted it, but I'm not sure if she has.
What major city is it by?
None of them. I'd be shocked, but
Oh.
it is south of Toledo in the Maumee River watershed. The Otsego School District is the landowner for this site, and that's why it's called a living laboratory. We got to create a lab for students.
Oh,
So
nice.
this was a 16-acre project. You can see the Yellow lines delineate the size of the project. 13 acres were an active farm field when we started our project. Black Swamp Conservancy, which is a wonderful land conservancy organization in Western Ohio, aiming to restore the Great Black Swamp, acquired funds from H2 Ohio, which is a state grant program that aims to reduce nutrient loadings within the Lake Erie watershed as well as the Ohio River watershed. And this was a project developed for the Otsego School District. And their school is just west of this site. You can see the football field and baseball field in the photo, and they had this great new access to an outdoor classroom as a result of this project. So I really enjoyed working on it. Here is what it looked like on the site when we got down to it. It's just a fallow field, you know, been through rotating alterations of soybeans and corn as we plant in Ohio. The project goals were to create at least 5 acres of emergent and scrub shrub wetland, restore a variety of different habitats on site, including native meadow and different types of woods. And we retained 2 acres in agricultural production for future farmers of America for students to be able to do experiments on their site. So we hosted a design charrette with the students at 30% design and presented our initial design to them, but also asked them to think about how they would study the site themselves and what they wanted on the site. So when I led that charrette with them, I talked through our first step is site assessment, and we have to think about what do we want to learn about the site. We want to document existing conditions by thinking from a wide range of perspectives and gathering as much information as we can. So thinking like an engineer, environmental scientist, landscape architect, ecologist, biologist, community planner, but also from a teaching lens, how would teachers want to use this site? How would a historian view this site of what's happened over time? How would the farmer use this site? And what do the neighbors think? This is a very public site.
So you
Surrounded
did
by
this
neighbors, as you can see.
You did this exercise with the kids?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. And they got to present their designs to us of what they wanted to do. And so they were 7th graders. And so some of the ideas were far-fetched. They wanted a zip line across Tontogany Creek on the north end of the site, but that didn't make it into the final plans. But some of their ideas did. So the first steps in site assessment, we look at past land use. This site had been farmed for most of modern history. It also had the Cincinnati rail line intersect. You can see in this historic aerial image, this faint line, that was an old rail line that ran through the site. It was used as an alfalfa grain mill until the 1940s. And there certainly was a lot of past indigenous history on the site as well. The soils out here are mostly clay loam and loamy clay. The hydrology on the site, we typically want to assess how is water flowing on the site. In this case, and in the case of a lot of agricultural fields, they've been tile drained, which you can see traces of in the aerial on this photo to the right. We document vegetation, what's currently growing on the site, and what do we think grew on the site in the past, and what do we think is likely to do well on the site in the future. We review any threatened and endangered species that could be known on the site, as well as cultural resources. And then after we can document existing conditions is when we get into design. So how do we take a site from a fallow farm field to a restored, especially sites as large as this? How do we convert those from farm fields into a restored site that nature can take over. So the first thing we really do is build up our base, which is restoring soil and water. So restoring that natural hydrology on a large site as this is similar to how maybe some of you have restored a rain garden at your site. So taking a unnatural gutter system that just shoots water quickly down your driveway, down into another storm drain, that unnaturally speeds up water rather than it draining into the land as it would have previous to that. So removing that tile drainage and adding in a rain garden, plants to soak up that water, slow it down and spread it out is very similar to what we do on our sites, just on a larger scale. So on a site such as this one, we're looking to identify those tile drains and break them so that the water can stay on the site longer. And on other sites, we might consider more stream restoration techniques. If a farmer has ditched a wetland or ditched a stream and unnaturally deepened it and straightened it, those are other ways we look to restore natural hydrology by reconnecting streams to floodplains, as well as
What are the drainage tiles made out of?
they are pipes of a different varieties. Some of them are clay, some of them are plastic. They have little holes in them to try to get the water to drain into them and then off the site quicker. And then you'll see them along streams where they outlet.
So then you've got to pull all that plastic out of the ground and
Sometimes
you just-
we take it off site. Sometimes we break it in place, depending on what the budget is. But if it's broken, then it's not functioning. But ideally, yes, we remove the plastic from the environment as well. Many of them are clay, though, I'd say. Most drain tiles are older. So we work to restore our hydrology to start, as well as our soils. On a site such as this, the soil could be compacted from a whole bunch of equipment use. So there's methods to decompact soil by ripping deep into it and decompacting it. We also take a look at past herbicides and pesticide use on a site. Sometimes those can linger in a site years after they've been sprayed. So depending on what you seed out there might be affected by those herbicides, even for years to come, unfortunately. But once you get a good solid base of restoring your soil and your hydrology on your site, you can start to think about what sort of plants you want to introduce onto your site. And then the insects will come on top of that, and then the wildlife from there. So here is the concept for the site. The centerpiece being that remaining agricultural field for students to be able to use in their ag classes. The dashed red lines running through it indicate tile drains that we would leave in place in case they wanted to study the effects of those. North of the agricultural field is where an emergent wetland is designed to be, where the tile drains would outlet to. So that would be how they're able to study the effects within the tile drainage of any of their agricultural experiments. But surrounding the, seeing some chats about the Great Black Swamp, maybe from a bit ago, right on Great Black Swamp. But there is a trail running throughout the site. Our trail was just a natural mown path, but the school later on added gravel, and I'm told now uses it as a track team, runs their practices around this loop. So hopefully they enjoy that. But other habitats within this project include scrub shrub wetland is the main portion on the southern end of the site. The soils in this part of the site were the most hydric or wettest. So some of those clayier soils that hold on to water longer. So they were the most suitable for a wetland restoration. So a technique we did here is called hummock and hollowing to alter the grading, and I'll talk a bit about that more later. Centrally within the loop, we added in a wet meadow, a wet forest, a food forest for the students to be able to use, and the dark green habitat is where we did a riparian forest, so expanding the existing riparian forest as one of those really important connecting corridors for wildlife to be able to use. Other components of the project included adding in wood features. That's what these little wood icons show. Interpretive signage. There were 5 or 6 signs added throughout the trail to explain what was going on the restoration site. We added a boulder amphitheater for students to be able to use as an outdoor classroom. Made sure they had access to get down to this creek to be able to study in their classes. And then there was plans for the school to consider future options such as adding a pavilion and other infrastructure for their outdoor classroom. So here is some more imagery, both from the site and just not from the site, but just in general, to talk about those restoration techniques. A meadow, I think we all know, but that's more of an upland type habitat. A wet meadow is like a meadow, but slightly wetter. Emergent wetlands. They could be seasonal, they could be year-round, but you have standing water generally part of the time. This photo is from the site. This is called hummock and hollowing. So if you have been in an older woods, you might notice that when an old tree falls over, the roots get uprooted and it leaves a little hole in the ground, and water might collect in that hole, it might not, but it provides a lot of variation in the ground and microtopography. And once the tree decays down too, that ultimately becomes a little pile. So you know that you're in an old woods when you don't see a completely flat landscape. You see variability. And when farmers generally plant, they flatten our landscapes. So that is a technique we generally use to restore variability in the landscape. And it helps both capture surface water flow and create wetland. Did I mute myself?
Yes, you muted yourself.
I muted
Sorry.
you. I tried to unmute myself. I just wanted to let you know that there was a comment in the, or question in the comments. What is the budget for the project? I didn't mean to silence you. I just was trying to.
No worries, it's okay. You can cut me off when I'm talking too much. The budget was around 300,000 for this project. So hummock and hollowing, I don't know where I got cut off, but the idea is to both vary the landscape, add in the diversity that was lost when farming came in and flattened everything, and add in that capture of surface water flow in wetland situations such as this. So this is from the southern end of the site a year after it was constructed. This is the trajectory of the wet forest, not from the site, but generally just a forest with some mesic species. The food forest, I'll talk a bit more in detail about, but the idea was to plant native fruits and nuts. Standing
that is
snags.
awesome.
Standing snags, we try to incorporate into all of our projects. Wood, such as a standing snag or a down log, are really important parts of nature. Not all clients or homeowners are interested in having this sort of habitat in their home or their site because they can perceive it to be messy looking. But when you're able to convince people that it's worthwhile to do standing snags, provide perching habitat for raptors and birds to be able to use the site. Down logs are important for amphibians, salamanders, the likes of that, and all the smaller creatures as well. So these messier components are important to include when you're able to. We had rock stepping stones across our emergent wetland for students to be able to use. This wasn't the site, this is a different site. This was a sign from the site fresh after construction, so you can see pretty fresh looking here, but I love these signs. They're made of natural wood from our construction company, Meadville Land Services, located in Meadville, Pennsylvania. A sand seepage berm was included on the site in between the farm field and the emergent wetland, just by adding grading into the site, and there was some sandy components in that part of the site. So the idea with that is providing water quality benefits. When water seeps through the berm, it removes some of those nutrients and contaminants before it is stored in the emergent wetland on the other side. And this is a full photo of the Boulder Amphitheater from the site for students to be able to sit at. So the food forest was one of my favorite parts. Here is a plant list, pretty small, but I will read for us. We included sugar maple for students to tap, pawpaw, hickory, which you can also tap if you didn't know, native crab apples, native mulberries, cherry, sassafras, serviceberry, hazelnut, spice bush, a whole bunch of berries, and some native seed to start. In our general planting strategy, when we're planting a site as large as this, we seed the entire site always. Sometimes we might add in plugs or live stakes or things of that nature. But as far as planting, research has shown that planting rows, especially of the same species, don't offer as much benefit to wildlife as diverse planting, not in a lined up row altogether. So it's one of my pet peeves on tree planting projects. If you can convince people to at least randomize where the trees are and give them a little more diversity. But the planting strategy we use is based off of the Miyawaki method, using planting pods. So in this photo, this is a couple years after construction, so it's growing up. This is Beaver Creek up in Munson Township. You can see a fence surrounding a very dense planting. So the idea with dense plantings is that it emulates what you see in nature more. New trees and shrubs appear I don't know how to explain this, but they appear when birds eat berries or nuts, right? And then poop out the seeds. So those seeds end up being very close together, and then nature self-selects and a forest develops around it. So we find that these planting pods is the term I mentioned, Jane. I just saw that question come in. Planting pods are recommended to plant over just straight rows. But I mean, you're certainly welcome to continue doing as you please, but the benefits of this, there's some ecological benefits to this planting method, as well as cost savings. If you're fencing in a 18 trees and shrubs at once for purposes of keeping the deer out from eating it, it can be more cost effective to do that way rather than put a tube on every single tree here. And generally, it's hard for places to remember to remove all those trees. Those tree tubes, you see those last around, and then that's just more plastic in the environment.
Oh, Erin, I have a question.
Yes.
With the verbiage planting pods, not rows, I take that as like, do you mean like in a more randomized fashion? What exactly? Because in my mind, the word pods, I'm thinking seed pods. That's what you mean? Planting seed pods and not plugs?
Good
Like, how are they
question.
using the word pods here?
Pods just mean that they're dense plantings together. So
Oh, okay.
this is
I
a
was like,
pod here of 18 intentional trees and shrubs that are pretty close together. They're much closer than this example, for instance. And they're diversified, they're intentional,
oh,
and
okay. Because I figured it meant, a randomized, diverse group of plantings. I just didn't know what they meant by the word pods in this instance. But okay, now I see what they mean.
good question. And thank you for answering in the chat. It is the Miyawaki method. So that's a Japanese method you could look up for some other cool forests they have planted.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
Of course. And I promise I'm getting close to the end for more questions, but I would say one of the best parts of this project was getting to create an outdoor lab for the students and getting to work with them on what their vision for the site was. So, like I said, we hosted design charrettes with them. We also educated them on some of these topics we're talking about here. Why are we putting dead trees up? Um, Children and adults have these questions. So they helped us with the plantings. They were very excited to get outside and work. They are studying macroinvertebrates in Tontogany Creek now, and they presented the site to the grant funders here in this top photo. So yeah, that was our Fox Shank Living Laboratory, and happy to take any questions on it.
Sorry, I'm just having a hard time finding raise the hand, so I don't see anybody else raising their hand. So you mentioned this is a $300,000 project, which is awesome. I'm surprised a school was able to pull together those funds even with H2O group. Is that your normal size of that type of project and initiative that you guys end up rolling out and partnering with schools on?
Great questions. A lot of the cost goes into acquiring properties, right? And this project was entirely funded by H2 Ohio. The school didn't have to pay any amount of money to it. So they acquired an outdoor classroom for zero money out of their pocket other than taxpayer dollars. So
Oh,
pretty
no.
incredible program here in Ohio. Worth checking out.
Was
I
it
would
the
say
school that triggered it, or was it the H2O group that would triggered it and that just happened to work with the school?
it was the work of the land conservation organization shown here at the Black Swamp Conservancy. So there's similar land conservancy groups that work in Northeast Ohio, like Western Reserve Land Conservancy and others that seek to acquire properties such as this that are available. This one was ideal because it was a farm field adjacent to a creek. So by removing it from agriculture, not that all agriculture is bad, just that this one happened to be located next to a creek and have good potential for restoring wetlands, that those are properties that are ideal opportunities to purchase, remove from agriculture, restore, stop those nutrients from going into the creek, and be able to provide an outdoor classroom for students. So kind of look at the wholesale picture of properties that make sense to acquire. But good land conservancy work here. And I think your second question is this a typical size project of this scale? I would say yes.
Thank you.
Erin, I have a question for you. It's
Yeah.
Diane. So was the land already sort of graded down towards the water? So like the farmer would put, potassium and all the other craziest stuff they put on there. land and then it went into the creek prior?
Yeah, you can kind of see these contours here, these white lines.
Yeah.
So the way that it drains going down into the site, and so you'd have issues on the surface with fertilizer running off through the surface, but then the same thing happens within the tile drainage network within the system. You'll see those pipes outlet directly to creeks too. So that's one of the causes of nutrient issues within Lake Erie that contribute to algal blooms, especially in
Yeah.
The western Lake Erie basin.
Exactly. So then they measuring like water quality in there now too? Is that part of what the students are doing or?
The students do, and so does H2 Ohio. So they have a wonderful partnership with different colleges in the state that research these sites and quantify water quality benefits from projects like this.
Excellent. Thanks. That's awesome.
Yeah. Jessica, do you have another question?
I do. I always have tons of questions. But anyway, what is the smallest type of school project that you guys did?
Prior to me joining Biohabitats, they did an outdoor classroom at the Willoughby School of Innovation. That's a little closer to Northeast Ohio. But I believe that included a stream restoration component. So I'm 100% on the budget there. It might have been a little bit smaller, but generally if there's an acquisition part of it, it can be pretty costly. But we do projects on existing schools as well without that component. I don't think any come to mind outright, but definitely do those as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Erin, you had mentioned, and this is my terminology, it's not correct. It's like a sand berm sort of separating for the agriculture area from the emergent wetlands. Do you know what I'm talking about? You had a slide.
Yes.
So that is designed to help filter out some of the byproducts of the agriculture. Do you ever have to change the sand? I mean, do those things build up or where do they go?
I'll go back to the picture of it. Great question. So, this kind of shows how water would flow running downhill across the site. So the seepage berm is this part that people are walking on, and they're not like huge berms. They're very nondescript little raised trails such as this for people to be able to use often. But water percolates through the soil profile across all sites. But when there's a component of sand in it, it helps provide some of those water quality benefits before it exits. So because our site, we were restoring the whole site upstream of it, right? So it's no longer in agricultural production. So there shouldn't be, a huge nutrient loading. We're not putting fertilizer on this site anymore. So in this case, no, we wouldn't need to change the sand. And a lot of the times we try to do these where there's existing substrate there. It just makes the most sense to use materials natural to the site. Number one, to not have to pay for them off site. Number two, that's what wants to be there, whether that's sand, whether that's wood, whether that's rock. So in this case, there was a sand component on the northern end of the site. So that is why we did a seepage a system there. I guess to your point, there was some agriculture remaining for the students to use, but not the same scale that there was before when the whole site was being farmed.
Does anyone else have any questions? Well, Erin, thank you so much. That was an absolutely fascinating presentation. I learned so much, really appreciate it. And what an incredibly rewarding job. You've got to feel so good about what you do every day because that's just absolutely phenomenal.
feel really lucky. So thank you for listening, and maybe I'll be able to lead us on a Northeast Ohio tour or something someday.